Hello and welcome to Dig It. I'm Peter Brown and hosting the show with me today is Chris Day. Hi Chris.
Hi Peter.
How are you doing?
Very well, and a very happy new year to you.
Thank you, Chris, and a happy new year to you. Do you have a nice Christmas break?
It was very nice, went very quick,
Yeah.
as it always does.
Bit damp, wasn't it? Snow sort of disappeared and made way for lots of puddles.
But it was nice whilst it lasted. A bit of snow, a bit of frost is obviously a good news for gardeners in many respects. Gets rid of those pests and those diseases, and hopefully will give us a bit of a clear ground for 2023.
Well, yeah, that's it, isn't it? It's all the aphids and the sort of tiny little flies that seem to disappear when you get a good hard frosting. So.
Indeed, and don't they say that your parsnips and all your root vegetables taste a little bit better with a bit of a frosting? So a lot of our home kitchen gardeners will have been very pleased with that frost back in December.
Well, certainly, I know my grandfather would never pull his sprouts before they'd had a good frost. He loves the nice, strong flavour of a good frosted sprout.
Oh, like I say, did it make it any sweeter?
No. He grew some fantastic sprouts, but yeah, they were always full of flavour, I think is the best way to describe it.
Okay, I'll think about that then.
Excellent. And I guess, well, it was snowdrop time, isn't it? Back, January here, and out the snowdrops pop.
Indeed, yeah. And I think, obviously, a culture will obviously bring them on that little bit quicker. So, yeah, get out and about there. And there's lots of ways of finding out. One of the best websites, Peter, is the greatbritishgardens.co.uk website, which has been to our go-to website over the last sort of 18 months doing Dig It, hasn't it? We've referenced it a lot for going to visit gardens, but they've got a really nice facility on there, so you can find your local snowdrop gardens local to you. And it's a good resource.
Go out and have a walk and try and burn a few of those Christmas calories off.
Why not?
Always a good thing, isn't it?
It is indeed, yeah. And it was interesting. The obviously we had the Garden Writers Guild awards back in November, late November, and this actual website we were just talking about, they actually picked up an award, which is really good news.
Okay.
It's one worth searching out for. But obviously, there's plenty of other snowdrop opportunity. A lot of the National Trust gardens obviously have them as well. So if you're a member of the National Trust, check out your handbook or your website and go and discover one. Perhaps just down the road from where you live.
Brilliant. And then we've got middle of January is Small is Beautiful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So this is a talk which is. Actually, it sounds really good because it's Kew graduate Alice Fowler. Many of our Dig It listeners will probably know Alice. She does, I think, a column for all of the Sunday newspapers, but also she used to do Presenting on Gardener's World magazine.
Yep.
She used to do a really good program on growing vegetables in a back garden. It was it was very friendly, very cosy program, and she
have to hunt on YouTube maybe for that.
Maybe that one, yeah. But she's got so obviously part of the Kew Garden Mutual Improvement Society. So check it out. It's online. And from 6 p.m. we'll put a link on the show notes for that. So that's on the 16th of January.
Okay. And then some nice winter sculptures in the great outdoors. Where's that?
Yes, so this is one of the RHS gardens. This is the one right down in Great Torrington, down in Devon. So if you're down that part of the world. It should
be quite warm down there in the south, isn't it? It's meant to be a few degrees warmer than up here in the Midlands.
It is. So this is the gardens, which are obviously famous for roses if you go there during the summer months. But it is a lovely garden. I have visited it a couple of times over the years. I've never visited it during the winter.
Right.
So I think the sculptures will be a nice opportunity. But it is very nicely landscaped, lots of water, lots of evergreens, if I remember rightly. So it'll be a good afternoon out, I would have thought.
Brilliant. Nice one. And I see the Great Pete debate continues. Now the Welsh have decided to get on board and join us British with banning peat. For some reason, I just imagined that because England was banning peat, so Scotland, Ireland and Wales would join in the ban too, but apparently not these days.
Not necessarily. No. That's the thing. And it was announced back in December that after much public consultation, I think it said 92% of respondents said the overall ban for peat cell compost was going to come into effort. So at the moment, there's no extraction of peat in Wales anyway. So probably in a different sort of league to perhaps obviously over in Ireland and in Scotland. But it's good news that at least we're all now following the same
Yeah, we're all good on board with the same route and path. So
Indeed,
hopefully-
yes, yeah.
And equally, I mean, you think although I think it comes from Yorkshire, doesn't it? The sheep and bracken
yes.
compost.
Delfts, yes.
There'd be a good opportunity for the Welsh to do some
Indeed.
sheep compost.
They
wouldn't it?
do like the sheep
wool.
down there. Yes,
Sheep's
indeed.
wool, not
Yeah.
sheep compost.
Yeah, well, it's the raw ingredients, isn't it? But
That's it.
yeah.
Brilliant. And in the news this week, was it Gardener's World magazine, the We Love Wentworth? Now, this is I guess would it be a stately home or?
It's part of an estate, 82 acres of private gardens belonging to a grade 1, listed stately home near Rotherham.
It's enormous. I mean, it looks. I think I might have seen it in a film or two, but absolutely beautiful looking building. And like you say, sort of 82 acres of grounds. Is it a National Trust one or?
No, I don't think so. It's not showing up as that. It's part of the historichouses.org on their website. So I think they have quite a number of houses which they sort of curate and obviously promote to the public. So
Okay.
this obviously picked up the most marks and most votes. And the votes were cast between April and September of last year. So it sort of was there. But it's built in 1725 by the first Marquis of Rockingham, and it's one of the house is one of the longest in Europe. That's what makes it look so stately. Looking at that photograph, there we go.
I mean, about 20 houses at least, all in one.
Yeah,
If you were very
indeed. And yes, we're talking about it's a Wentworth Woodland Preservation Trust in partnership with the National Trust. So so there's the key. That's why it's had so much, lots of love and money spent on it since the 1940s, when it went to almost rack and ruin by the sounds of things. So
okay, well,
that
sort of size building often does, doesn't it? Unfortunately,
yes, indeed.
So that's worth a visit then if you're up in Yorkshire.
Indeed, and it's famous for its camellias as well. It's got a camellia house, and it has Europe's oldest camellias as well. So we're coming into that season another couple of
because they're
months.
such beautiful flowers, aren't
Fantastic.
they? And they smell a bit as well. They're
Some of them are fragrant, but they just
lovely smell. I always think when you smell a camellia in sort of January, not much in flower at that time of the year, but they're lovely dark glossy leaves and
nice and lustrous,
pretty
aren't they? Healthy and lustrous, as you say.
And I see there's a call for all the seeds and plant collections to be sort of given a little bit of help by the government to basically bring them all together, is it? And our friends over at Garden Organic and the Heritage Seed Library would appreciate some help.
I'm
wouldn't they?
sure
I mean, at the end of the day, it's a massive collection of all of our genetic material, and you just think, well, interesting that the government doesn't sort of have any control over it or doesn't really help it.
Yeah, it does make you think, doesn't it? Because of our diversity in this country, that we don't do that. But the good news is that the Plant Heritage. They've got over 650 national collections, and I'm sure we're all familiar with a lot of those. We've mentioned them over the last couple of years with Dig It, haven't we? Some of these major collections, and the
rhubarbs have gone up north, haven't they?
They have,
gooseberries.
Indeed, as we reported last month. So so it's all good. So if we can, and it is the genetic pool all these national collections hold, which are key, and they are a real strength of UK horticulture, aren't they?
Well, massively. That's it. And it's all very well sort of relying on people just to be interested in them, to preserve them, which thankfully there are a lot of great gardeners out there who
very passionate about it as well.
Have these collections, but equally, you'd think from a historical and a scientific point of view, it would be useful to preserve them as well.
Most definitely. Well, let's just hope that they do get the support, and I'm sure we'll report on it as and when it happens.
Brilliant. And the Green Fingers charity, which is sort of the garden centre and garden centre suppliers charity, so we're always pushing it and trying to make donations towards it, aren't we?
We are indeed.
What are they up to, Chris?
So, as you know, Peter, they're very actively involved in creating these wonderful escapes at hospices for children.
Smelly gardens and sensual gardens.
And sensory gardens and everything in between, And, wonderful outdoor spaces which obviously the children and the parents can use. So a new one has opened over in St Oswald's Hospice near Newcastle, and obviously massive fundraising drives by all the supporters, and it's just nice to give it a shout out because obviously they'll want to continue to raise monies to maintain it, because these sort of gardens, once they've been developed, obviously need
they need the maintenance.
from volunteers.
This one's got a lovely looking dovecot, which will need a coat of paint in a few years.
It will
time.
Indeed, yes, and it looks like there's a lovely range of trees there as well. So it's been a major, a major. And yes, the Green Fingers chairman, Sue Allen, which is obviously Sue Allen's well known in the garden centre world for her work. So it looks like this is going to be a good, wonderful outdoor space. And of course, Green Fingers, as we know, gets lots of, as you say, mentions, especially with the RHS at Chelsea Flower Show time, and obviously high-profile garden writers such as David Dominy.
And vertical gardens are branching out again, I see.
I like the pun, Peter. Excellent.
Well, they're growing trees now, aren't they? I mean, it's a very compact and efficient sort of production system, isn't it? So it makes sense if you've got a propagation centre, rather than having acres and acres of glass, to give you the surface area to grow all the little cuttings, to do it in a vertical garden, isn't it?
That's it. And I think with trees as well, there's such a massive, as we've already mentioned on Dig It the last couple of months, isn't it? There's such a demand for trees now, and it's the supply and demand, which means that if you're growing plants in this sort of way, very highly accelerated under special lighting, obviously temperature control, once you've got those seeds to germinate, and of course with trees that's the difficult bit, if you like. Once they're growing, you can really accelerate the growth in perfect conditions. So almost sort of factory farming plants in this way, I think is a definite positive. And of course the technology is there to do that very easily and relatively inexpensively now.
Yeah, because I think originally vertical farms were quite expensive, but now obviously LEDs have become far more efficient and far more refined, and the whole systems have been proven now. They are coming down in cost, but and it's a very efficient, sort of clean way of producing things, so why not?
Indeed, and of course by growing them this way, things like resources like water, you don't need quite as much water in the production, because obviously they're in small cells. They're not in huge pots and things, which obviously keeps the cost down. It's just unfortunate now, obviously with the energy crisis, that's now put a bit of a spanner in the works. But I think the whole idea is that if you can reduce growing plants by 90 days, then that's, production-wise, that's amazing.
You're heating a far smaller area, and I mean, vertical gardening is all about efficiency, isn't it? So,
and it's a great example at putting it to hardy plants rather than your sadder crops and your bedding plants.
That's it. And now at the other end of the spectrum, old trees.
Very old trees.
Yeah, last year we were talking about, was it 2,000-year-old tree? Now we're talking about a 500-year-old yew. Where can we see that then, Chris?
Yeah, so this tree's found at Waverley Abbey, which is in Farnham in Surrey, and it's one of the very first monasteries to be formed by the Cistercian religious order, so it's got a lot of history attached to it, and obviously this one is over 500
years. Big, isn't it? I mean, it's got a massive root structure.
Wonderful.
It's sort of above the surface. It looks like one of those bonsais that you see, which has grown over a rock, but it's a proper full-grown tree.
Yeah, it reminds me of. I mean, it takes me back to the sort of the Lord of the Rings sort of era.
It's a good one, isn't it?
Yeah, you expect,
probably well worth a visit to have a look at that. There. And then second place went to the Portal Tree, which is up in Scotland in Midlothian, which is a Rowan tree, isn't it?
Rowan,
Mavis Bank House, which apparently is one of Scotland's most important historic houses.
Right. Okay.
I have to look into why that is important. I don't know.
Okay.
And then third place, we're not entirely sure where it is.
Right.
But it's a layered horse chestnut, and it's in Derbyshire.
Right. Derbyshire, big old county, plenty of horse chestnuts.
Well, horse chestnut's a big tree, so I'm sure it'd be
very noticeable. Yeah, but that one's that's interesting. That one, because it's got it was struck by lightning, wasn't it, Peter? And it's obviously
fell over.
Yeah, and producing this obviously interesting architectural sort of
roots and what have you. Yeah, we'll have to look that up and see if we can put a link on the website for those
as well.
Find, a bit more information.
But I suppose the key is they are all living legend trees. They've all got a story to tell.
And really, really old, I suppose.
Old, yeah. It's perfect.
And moving on to Christmas competitions, Chris, I suppose we should mention the GCA Christmas Awards.
Indeed, yes.
Who won this year then?
So we've got, Brimsmore Gardens, which are based down in Yeovil, Somerset, and Garston's Garden Centre at Esher. They both picked up awards.
Yeah, and went and destinated. Well, they're slightly smaller garden centres, although I think Garston's Esher is reasonable size. I've not been to Brimsmore, but in the excessively large garden centre category is Barton Grange and Bents, who are both enormous great size,
massive garden centres.
And then Gates got third place, but they're all up north.
Indeed, that's something about. Well, what does it say? I don't know. It's just a good observation that there's obviously lots of
great garden centres and Christmas displays
everywhere, really. But no, it's good, and obviously. Despite obviously all the issues with surrounding our economy at the moment, the Christmas displays have obviously paid good dividends.
That's it. I mean, we can still do a good display even if the budgets are a little bit tighter this year.
Indeed.
It's always fun to make a good display, isn't it?
Indeed.
And on slightly sadder news, the restaurant at Alton Garden Centre had a fire, didn't it?
It did, yes. This is back in last month, actually, the early part of December. Fortunately, as Andy Bunker, I think it's the CEO or MD of Alton, said that thank goodness for steel fire doors and shutters. They did their job. So, it was it caused a lot of problems. 50% of the shop was completely untouched, but there was smoke damage elsewhere. But good news is that the restaurant is going to be reopening again. Well, it will be reopened as we go out to air.
Excellent. And if you're thinking of a big project for this year, maybe the research that Crown Pavilions, who are one of Malvern the garden buildings competitors, can we call them?
Maybe, yeah.
Provide us with this lovely building that we sit in. So we'll mention what the competition have been doing, which is a bit of research. And they've found out that, well, what's the top?
Yeah, so Peter, the top features their top 10, and this is basically including the average spend. Number one is decking.
Yep.
Which obviously is a big amount of money anyway, isn't it? Followed by fruit and veg patches. So I suspect that's going to be raised beds. And then you've got lighting, garden lighting, greenhouses, which again from
garden offices.
Yes, that's interesting.
I don't know whether they're going to be so popular now we've all gone back to work in the normal workplaces.
Although that's a bit debatable still, isn't it? A lot of people are still doing.
Yeah, some people are still working from home, but a lot more are going back to whether that will be the same next year. And then, like you say.
And then we've got ponds, water features, and then playground equipment, followed by garden room. So this is this thing, isn't it? A garden office to a garden room. Well, it's interesting one. But and of course, the last but not least, statues and ornaments. So if you've got a nice palatial garden.
But Chris, I think we missed the most important one off there. The barbecue.
Of course.
The most important thing every garden definitely needs is a good barbecue.
And summer coming up, and hopefully a repeat of last year's summer. Let's hope so. That would be good.
Get a few more barbecues going.
Indeed.
That's it. Brilliant.
But, all these sort of researches which come out from companies, you maybe take with a bit of a pinch of salt. However, we know, anecdotally what people are spending their money on, and certainly, investing in your garden. Well, there's nothing quite like it. If it's good money being spent, it rewards you in so many ways, doesn't it?
Well, that's it. Plant a courgette plant, and you've got courgettes for a year.
That's it.
Now, I seem to remember a few years ago, chamomile lawns were all the rage, but apparently TikTok's now pushing. It's not potato lawn, is it, Chris?
It's not. No, not in this instance. But it's something quite equally as bizarre, and that's clover lawns.
Okay. Well, I don't see why not. I mean, it grows very well in my lawn.
Exactly.
Saves you just take the grass out and just grow clover, couldn't I?
But so basically, the video on creating a clover lawn has been viewed by over 62 million times on social media. And that's it. Now, 62 million times is a lot of views. This research comes out of the insurance firm Admiral, and they hashtagged it at Gardening Hacks. And it actually has racked up a massive 1.2 billion views. But when you go onto TikTok and have a look, if you search basically clover, you bring up a whole plethora of wonderful videos. People sowing clover,
Yep.
people cutting it and in a very, very artistic way with their hover mower.
Right.
And to be honest with you, it is quite a thing.
It's worth watching.
it
Well,
is
to
worth
be
it.
fair, I mean, clover's fantastic for bees. They
Oh,
love it.
most definitely,
And
yeah.
you get obviously red clover and white clover, and
Yeah.
they love both of them. So.
And they're very hard wearing by the looks of the video. People will
Okay.
go across it as well. So actually, a shout out for clover is not a bad thing, really, in the scheme of things. But again, we'll put the link on to the show notes, and you'll be clovered out, I think.
Brilliant. And I see DEFRA is letting the country down with plastic grass. So the Lawn Association. Now, we had a very interesting interview with David Hedgesgow a few podcasts ago, didn't we?
We did,
about
yes.
how to grow grass properly. He's
Yes.
a massive advocate of good quality lawns and real grass.
And lawnmanship as well, doing the right things at the right time and
Yep.
really taking pride of your lawn. So with the idea of people using this artificial plastic grass really obviously riles him as somebody who's very passionate about the real thing. However, as we know, the whole industry of plastic grass is a huge one now, and unfortunately the product is produced from recycled materials which aren't
It's
particularly...
plastic, isn't
Plastic,
it, essentially?
yeah,
So
essentially.
it's the oil industry, and
Yes.
it's not great for the environment.
No.
And
It's a difficult one, isn't it?
it's such a hard one because it looks so authentic and it doesn't need cutting.
It's improved from from the years when you used to see sort of green grassettes on your local greengrocers to what we've got now.
The market stall covering, that was
Indeed,
a nice
that was the benchmark at the time, wasn't it? In the 19
it's now
70s.
turned into actually looking like grass and
Yeah.
so much better. But I've got to agree with him that fundamentally, if you want to improve biodiversity and cut down on use of oils and plastics and all of that sort of thing, you've got to go with the real thing rather than...
Yeah, I think that what his gripe is to the letter to DEFRA is that is the government really taking any action on this? Is it just going to be allowed to continue at the whim of the proper lawn? And I think we've already mentioned in previous podcasts about the RHS looking at, they were sort of banning artificial grass in their gardens at a lot of the flower shows.
Yep.
And then there was a call that if they're going to produce this sort of product, make sure it is all from recycled plastic. It has a proper story which people can relate to. So maybe if that happened, people might not look at it so solitary. But no, I'm with David on this one. I think we need to keep plugging the real lawn.
Real lawn,
and
just enjoy the fact that it creates a bit more work for us.
Yeah, and it has a bit of clover in it. It's not the end of the world now, as we've just found out.
The world's largest garden wildlife survey returns in end of the month,
End of the month, yeah. It's the weekend of the 27th to the 29th, Peter. So it's the RSPB Big Garden Birdwatch. This is where everybody is meant to spend an hour in the garden recording what birds they see in the trees, coming down to your bird tables, just recording the different species and then letting the RSPB know. So it's a really good thing to get involved in, get the whole family involved and get the children
I know my
involved.
children love doing it, and I think it makes me think I must fill up the bird feeders.
Indeed.
Now it's a good time to start filling them up now if you have got empty bird feeders, because it takes them the birds a couple of weeks to come back to your garden, doesn't it? So,
especially with the cold weather we've been experiencing too. Only count. So basically, you only count the birds that land, not literally fly over your for your property, and you record the highest number of each bird species you see at any one time. Not the total you see in an hour. So it's all about the diversity of what's coming into your garden.
Yep.
As well there. Now, if you go to their website, we'll put the link on there, but rsp.org.uk /birdwatch, you get all the details there. So get bird watching.
Allotments are in the news. I mean, obviously there's a big national shortage of them, but this is a really interesting article. You found it in Garden News.
Garden News, yeah. So it's the National Allotment Society, the NAS. They've basically want to promote a new service to encourage all the housing developers and local government to basically ensure that allotments are included in all the new housing developments.
Well, I was looking at a brochure for a estate down in Buckingham, just on Tinswick Road, and they were promoting how they were planting, I think it was 1,000 odd trees or something, and they were putting a certain amount of area towards parks and space. But obviously the modern house has a much smaller garden.
Indeed.
Which is great for possibly sitting out with a couple of deck chairs, and that's about all you can fit in your garden. But there's no space being allocated to actually allotments and growing areas, is there? I mean, a lot of places have community gardens, and thinking back to the 30s, 40s, 50s, local governments would allocate areas of land to allotments, and I haven't seen anything like that recently.
It's very strange, Peter, because if you're going back to the 1950s and 60s, a lot of the allotments were built on railway land. Yep. And so Network Rail, or the British Rail as it was, actually dedicated areas which were obviously close to the rail tracks, but obviously safe enough for houses to use as land for that. And they obviously a few years ago culled back a lot of that land and sold it.
Right.
Which obviously caused a bit of a rumpus in the allotment fraternity. So that was going back in the sort of late 90s, early 90s. But no, this is an initiative. But if you ever go to Holland, I go over to Holland quite regularly, and I've got family over there, and all the housing estates over there have either a community garden or an allocated allotment area. And they're beautiful. They're really well maintained, well kept. And people take pride in them because it's on their land in a way. So it's not as though it's something an additional where other people might use. It will be enjoyed by the whole community. And I think, especially as you say, with gardens getting smaller, this would be a great way of adding a lot more community spirit to a lot of these ones.
I mean, that's why developers have got away with making gardens smaller, because not everyone wants to get in and have a big vegetable patch. But for those that do,
this would be the perfect opportunity.
This would be a very good opportunity to be knocking on the local government's door and saying, well, change your policies a bit and allocate some space to community gardens.
And I would say, as somebody, into my mid part of my life, that in a way is which is an attractive selling point of these new housing estates, that I could get a little plot to grow fruits and vegetables on.
Well, you don't need that much space, do you? I mean, sort of 10 metres by 5 metres is
that's all you need.
Than enough to support a good few vegetables. Anyway.
Yeah. So let's hope the National Allotment Society gets a little bit more interest in the next few years, and we see some changes, maybe.
Good idea. And it was the Garden Media Guild Awards at the Savoy, wasn't it? Recently.
Yes, that was back in back in late last year, and lots of interesting nominations and winners were awarded there. And I think this story is from Garden News, and Garden News has quite a few of the writers and people involved in the awards. And Naomi Slade, she picked up the Practical Journalist of the Year for her notes on a small garden column for Garden News. So it was rather good there for that. And I mean, a lot of other journalists and photographers were highlighted as well. But one thing I did see, Peter, which was quite interesting, is the Lifetime Achievement Award. Obviously, this goes to somebody in the gardening world who's obviously added lots of prestige to the company they've worked for, or brought a lot of advice and information to those. And this year, the award went to Michael Marriott, who's the head poncho, if you like, of David Austin Roses. So he's been their spokesperson on all their wonderful work they've done over the years, from rose breeding to bringing out all those wonderful varieties to the public.
Well, yeah, I mean, they've got thousands of varieties now, haven't they? They've really established David Austin is one of those prestige names now in roses.
It's a brand, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
So well done to Michael for winning that major award.
Brilliant. And I guess we should update people as to what's selling well in the garden centre at the moment.
Why not? Yes, yeah, and of course
bird food. Obviously, we've got the big bird garden bird watch
later on this month. Yeah,
share bird food sales with you. What's the best-selling bird food at the moment?
So the best one is wild bird food mix. So
that's the mixed seed, isn't it?
Mixed seeds, which we do. Yeah, and number 2 is peanuts. Bird peanuts. Yeah, again. Number 3, fat balls.
Okay.
And again, in the 4th position is wild bird food mix, but in a smaller, it's actually in a bigger bag, isn't it? It's a
3 kilo rather than a 1 kilo, yes.
Yeah, so
it's slightly better value, I think, from memory.
Yep, indeed.
And then you can have a sack in 5th place, which is 20 kilos. So interesting that most people are clearly picking wild bird mix for their feeders. I'd always imagined it would be peanuts, which was the most popular.
Yeah. I do see that number 6, just teetering out of the top 5, is sunflower hearts, which you sort of expect as well. But again, I was quite surprised not to see mealworm. I know it's very specific to robins, which obviously we love to see in our gardens at this time of the year, but I can never get enough mealworm for my little robins.
Well, it always disappears so quickly, doesn't it? As soon as you put it out, it all goes. They love mealworm, but it's I guess a bit more of a treat, maybe. So that's why it doesn't hit the top 10, top 5.
Yeah, indeed.
And the last bit of news that I think we should share with people.
Well,
colour of the year.
Colour of the year. So this is a bit of a thing, isn't it, Peter? Every year, Pantone, who obviously are involved in the whole area of colour, have a dedicated colour. And this year, the colour of the year is going to be Viva Magenta.
Okay.
And they describe it.
Bold colour, isn't it?
It is bold, yes. You'll certainly know if you've planted your garden out in that particular colour. But they describe it as very powerful, very empowering, and it's. I just love the sort of terminology. It's a bit like when you describe wines and things, isn't it? They describe it as a new animated red that revels in pure joy, encouraging experimentation and self-expression without restraint, an electrifying and boundless shade that is manifestly as a standout statement. Well,
you get all that from just a colour.
Really. It's all good stuff, isn't it? And the great virtue is that Bull Colgrave, who've released this information, obviously for the garden centre trade, they're going to have a lot of lovely Viva Magenta varieties of colour to entice us.
Bedding plants, you think of Impatiens and the... What are the trailing ones that often have?
We've got Verbenas, they would be in that colour range. Oh, there's a whole host, and there's quite a lot of perennial plants as well. So, yeah, I think it's going to be a great opportunity and really to make your garden stand out, to put a bit of wow into your summer garden.
Brilliant.
It's a good one.
It's going to be a colourful year then.
It
this
is.
year. That's our prediction for 2023.
I don't think we'll be wrong somehow or other.
No. Well, now we've sorted out what colour we've got to plant this year. You got any jobs for us for January?
For January. So if you haven't been out and had a look at your apple and pear trees, Peter, now is the month to tackle those. So you don't have to do anything massively wholesale. All you're doing is basically trimming out small amounts of growth to give the plant a bit more structure. Any of those long, lanky shoots, cutting back. Obviously, the 3Ds, the dead, dying, and diseased wood, chop that out. The great virtue of doing your pruning with your apples and pears at this time of the year, of course, you can see the whole framework of plants. You haven't got leaves in the way. And that makes it so much easier, so much quicker. But like anything, choose a nice day, a mild day.
I was going to say, does it matter if it's a frosty day or
It doesn't. Well, it doesn't. It doesn't. It does for us as gardeners. Cause it's
the apple trees don't mind.
They don't mind it at all. No, they're in dormancy, so that's absolutely fine. So nice sharp secateurs. So if Father Christmas has been really good and it's left you some nice secateurs, then you'll be fine. But make sure they're nicely clean. And if you're doing lots of cutting of different wood, get yourself some methylated spirits and just dip the blade into that just to give it a bit of a clean.
Okay.
Between trees, and then that will then reduce any chances of infection.
Transferring diseases from one tree to the next.
Yeah, so that's quite good there as well. You don't need to use any wound paints. That's not really necessary unless you're taking very large limbs out. Then there's products like Meadow, which you get from the garden centre to paint over there. So try and do that, but try and get it done by the end of February. So you've got a couple of months to get on with that particular job.
Okay. And I see rhubarb's in the news as well. We need to start forcing rhubarb.
It is, yeah. So this is rhubarb which has been in for a year or two. So if you planted some last autumn, don't force it this first year. Let it get on with establishing this year. But if it's been in for a year or two, then get yourself either a nice rhubarb force. I noticed we've got some nice ones at the garden centre here.
They're lovely terracotta.
They are.
Sort of I don't know what you call them, jars or
Jars, yes.
pots, I suppose. But
With a nice big lid on the top.
yeah,
which
they do look nice, but they're a few pounds.
They are, yes. No, they're not, but they do look, and they are part of the character of your garden, aren't they, in a way? When you put one of those there, you're making a statement that you grow rhubarb. So, but of course, you're just trying to accelerate the growth under the container. But you can use a dustbin, a very large bucket, large pot. But all you're trying to do, basically, with rhubarb forcing is to exclude the light.
Okay.
So, no heat, just exclude the light, and of course, then the plant starts to trigger growth under that bucket, and off it goes. Yeah.
Brilliant.
So try and do that. And now we've obviously had some really cold weather back in December. That should help the process through January.
Okay.
And thinking about encouraging things, wildlife, of course. Now, so maybe have a look around the garden. Maybe identify areas where you want to perhaps do some wildflower seed sowing and such like, or maybe try and encourage some more beneficial insects into your garden.
Yep.
January, February, a good time just to have a look round and make that call, and then obviously get yourself some seeds for sowing, in March. So a bit of planning if you want to go for the encouragement of beneficial insects.
Fair enough. Good stuff. And leaf curl, peach leaf curl. What do we need to think about in January with regards to peaches?
So if you're growing peaches, nectarines against a wall, then really it's a matter of keeping your peach tree a lot drier.
Okay.
So that's why it's always good to wall train or fan train your peach trees if you can. We have a bit of a problem at the garden centre. Getting hold of peach trees is quite tricky these days. They're not grown as widely as they used to be.
Right.
So when you do manage to get a plant, you'll probably fan train it against a wall or a fence, but then put some sort of structure over. So maybe you get some nice fleece or something, and then drop that over the plant to keep the plant a little bit drier through the winter months.
Okay.
And that will help. Of course, there's no fungicides on the market now we could recommend for peach leaf curls, so it's all down to the
care of the plant.
Indeed, keeping the plant drier through the winter months, and then hopefully you won't have such a bad attack come the spring. And obviously with peaches and all fruit, once we get into late January, February, start mulching and improving the soil around the base of these plants, just to give them that help in the spring when they start to come into growth too. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And potatoes are in the shop. All I don't know, 48 varieties. I think we've got this year.
So it's a good sight to see, isn't it? Spring is on the way.
Definitely, the potatoes come out into the shop, and it's a lovely smell. The sort of earthy smell that potatoes have in the shop, and but I guess start thinking about going and selecting them, and what is it, golf ball sized potatoes you want?
The size of a large hen's egg, isn't it? Something they usually say hen's egg size, or maybe not quite as big as
a golf ball or a hen's egg. Depends on what size hen you've got, I suppose, doesn't it? But
yes, good size, nice uniform size, and get yourself some obviously egg cartons. So if you're planning to do that, make sure you sort of save a few of those up and recycle those when you've used your eggs, because they're the perfect little compartment to space them out in, and give them all a little bit of room to develop and produce those little chits.
Because I just put mine out in the garage as it's it's not heated, it's relatively cool in there, but it's frost free.
That's the most important thing.
They always seem to do okay in there and send their little white shoots up.
Yeah, cool and light is the secret, isn't it? With chitting potatoes, they don't. Any warmth, you'll get too straggly growth, which of course you don't want if you're starting early. And really, the most important thing is if you're going to grow early and second earlies, January is the month to get those varieties before they sell out. And I'm thinking also as well, Peter, there's a few things you can start to sow as well. I'm thinking on the windowsill, we all like to get going. Microgreens, of course, they're good fun.
You can grow them all year round, can't you?
You can,
Sort of the mustards and cresses and those fancy purple shooty things that you see in fancy restaurants. I don't know what they're called.
Fenugreek. And then you've got things like radish and rocket as well, which obviously are good for your salads, for your sandwiches and things as well. So there's quite a good range now. The range we do, I've noticed in the shop, includes things like coriander foliage too. So get a little bit of a bite to your sandwiches and things, and to your salad. So have a go with those. It has all moved on since the mustard and cress days, hasn't it? There's lots of
the Bible counts, definitely.
Yeah.
I can remember as a child growing those bean sprouts, I think it was, in a
Sprouts, yeah.
little sort of funny.
Alfalfa. Was it alfalfa?
Yeah, maybe that's what it was. They looked like bean sprouts, but
Yeah.
they probably were alfalfa. they
Yeah.
tasted all right. They were okay.
Yeah.
To be fair, they were worth doing.
Yeah, indeed. And then going into the garden, I suppose, our winter bedding. Obviously, that's taken a bit of a battering over the last few weeks, but
Yep.
winter bedding is programmed to flower on shorter, colder days. So just make sure the plants are regularly deadheaded. Remove all those spent flowers. If you've not had chance over the last few weeks, get out there, give them a good clean up, and they should start to reward you with some glorious flowers over the next few weeks as the day length start to increase as we get into February.
Okay. And black spots on helleborus. That's
Yes.
not a positive, is it?
No.
Helleborus are a lovely sort of winter flowering
Yeah,
plants, aren't they? But obviously, yeah, they do get.
they do, and it's
Bit
such a
of fun.
shame, isn't it? It really sort of spoils the show. It's interesting that, I mean, I've got one in the garden now, which actually has been flowering since the end of October.
Okay.
And its leaves are looking a bit the worse for wear. But be proactive and remove any of those badly damaged leaves. It's not the end of the world. You're getting rid of the fungal spores. Make sure they're destroyed, either incinerated or put in the green waste bin, and get shot of them before they reinfect the soil. That's quite important, because hellebores, they sit there, they get bigger and better every year. So anything which is going to hit their vigour in future
you
years
wanna
is
get rid of it.
Indeed. So that's important as well. And if you're being really tidy in the garden, and again, we're always a very divided nation when it comes to winter tidying, because we're always thinking about our wildlife. But if you are going around, chopping things back, just bear in mind that a lot of wildlife, take refuge in grasses and things. So think about them a little bit as you're going around with your secateurs and loppers this month.
Okay. And a good time of year to cut back Rosa rugosa.
Yes, so obviously hedging roses.
I was going to say that's the extra prickly one, isn't
It
it,
is.
from memory?
Oh, gosh, it is.
Rosa rugosa.
It's my least favourite rose in the
If
garden.
you've got some very good gloves,
Yes,
we might suggest having a think about cutting
indeed.
it back.
Just give it a bit of thought. However, the reason because you might think, didn't Peter and Chris mention about pruning roses back in November, which we did. However, Rosa rugosas, of course, are grown for the hips.
Yep.
Which are hopefully by sort of the end of this month,
time of year they should have
disappeared.
finished,
The hips have gone, or they've been taken by the birds and the other mammals as well as food. So, yes, there comes that point where you've got to give the plants a bit of a trim back to start to stimulate the shoots, to give you the framework which you'll carry your flowers for.
Yeah, for this
later
year.
Yeah. So so go along, and how much do you cut them back? By half. I mean, you can go quite hard with Rosa rugosa. It comes back with
Such a virulent plant when it's established, isn't it? You can, it's a really good one for
perfect.
creating barriers, certainly.
It did, yes. Hence, the gloves are very, very essential.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also the rest of the roses, as we say, we were trimming those back in November to stop windrock. So maybe do check those, especially if you've got roses on climbing frames, or make sure they're all nicely tied in and secure over the winter, because they can become unstuck. And of course, that's the worst thing you want is the winter gales to break those vulnerable stems as well. So go around and tie in all your climbers, which might look a bit vulnerable, your clematis and maybe your wisteria, those new ones you planted last year.
Great stuff. Okay, well, thanks for that, Chris.
Pleasure.
And in a couple of weeks' time, Chris, who we got coming in to chat to us?
Right, we're going to be delighted to be welcoming Charles Downing. He is the no-dig guru.
Yeah,
So
I like him.
yeah, already.
Just, already, without even having interviewed him yet, just the idea of no dig. He's into, well, essentially it's mulching, isn't it?
Mulching,
But
yeah.
I'm so keen to learn more about this, because
There's a little bit more to it just that, but however, his the way he explains it and his processes, I'm really looking forward to chatting to him. It should be a really good interview, and that'll be the middle of this
middle
month,
of January, a couple of
yeah.
weeks' time, 15th it goes out, doesn't it?
Yeah,
So
indeed.
as always, please tell your friends about our show if you do enjoy it. It's been great having you with us for this show.
Indeed. And if you like the show, please subscribe.
Thanks then, Chris.
Thank you, Peter. Today's show was brought to you by Buckingham Garden Centre and Nurseries. The show was hosted by Chris Day and Peter Brown. The show was produced by Peter Brown. And our thanks to Chiltern Music Therapy for providing the music. Thanks for listening.
At Chiltern Music Therapy, we want everyone to know the difference that music can make in their lives. From parents and their premature babies in hospital to grandparents with dementia. We provide music therapy and community music services to people of all ages and needs across England. We work both digitally and in person in people's homes, care homes, schools, hospitals and hospices. Find out more at chilternmusictherapy.co.uk.